by dedication, I suppose. So you only get good at something by doing it over a sustained period of time. And when I first started using Pro Tools, I had no idea about really how to use it at all. And it was installed at the company I worked for by a company called Studio Care, who I think were from Liverpool. They put it in, didn't provide any instruction as to how to use it. And so I just had the 800-page reference manual, started reading it on page 1, thank you for buying Pro Tools, and started it from there. And it took me 2 days to get a signal from the voiceover booth into Pro Tools. And then I kind of took it from there and eventually started doing rudimentary mixes on videos, which by the standards that I'm working at now were quite crude, but nevertheless, they were an improvement on what they had previously in this particular company because they'd just been mixing it in Avid Media Composer. And it was literally just balancing levels. That's all they'd done. So the fact that we were using EQ and compression, even that was a jump over what they had. That's good. One good tip is don't be a dick, basically, because some people are. And, the people who are sort of arseholes in the industry, for want of a better word, aren't going to last long because they don't make very good colleagues and no one wants to work with them. That's it. Yeah. So it's about being good to work with, getting the job done to a high standard, being able to meet deadlines. And, this isn't the kind of industry where you can just start work at 9 a.m. and go home at 5. It's basically like sporadic hours. You might have to work outside of the standard kind of working times and do whatever it takes to get the job done. Because if you don't, somebody else will, and they're going to start taking the job. So you've got to be the one who's leading it. It kind of is, but you get to a point where you are sufficiently competent that you've got enough skills under your belt with regards to audio production to be able to tackle a wide range of jobs. And I suppose it's getting to the point where you're so proficient with things like, for example, Pro Tools, that you can just operate it without thinking. And that you can only get to that point by continuously practicing. And you don't just go home and doss around in the evening watching TV. You've got to be learning stuff. One of the hardest things is definitely getting into the industry. And that's one of the common questions. How do you get started? Because it's almost like it's the first and the hardest hurdle, really, isn't it? And one thing is trying to establish as many contacts as possible. So then the question is, how? How do you do that? And one of the answers is, with regards to post-production, certainly, networking events. Now, with COVID, that might be a bit difficult at the moment, but if you keep an eye out, there are film events that happen, in various cities around the world, wherever you're based, and you could go to film screenings. For example, some of my previous students found an event here in Manchester at a cinema called Home, and they went there, and there were various sort of locally produced, low to mid-budget features shown, and they got speaking to some of the filmmakers there about potentially doing jobs. And my suggestion to them was, it's good to speak to those filmmakers, but if you speak to the person organising the event and say, I'm a post-production audio person, I can offer services to all of the 100 people who are submitting in this film festival, then you become a key contact. And they actually got 2 jobs out of that, even before they finished the course, just by being there and by speaking to this person who was organising the event. So you've got to be, for want of a better word, proactive, I suppose, and try and actively pursue jobs. They won't just come to you. You've got to get yourself out there in one way or another, and having an online presence is important. So, things like this on YouTube are very useful. Other platforms, like LinkedIn, all that kind of networking type stuff, and of course Facebook is good. So you've got to produce sufficient content for people to be aware that you are actively doing stuff, but it's a fine line because you don't want to start spamming everyone with crap every day. So it's got to be worthwhile content that is meaningful and that shows you're a professional, you're doing stuff, and that people should work with you. In this kind of industry, a degree isn't critical. It could, if all things being equal, if you had 2 people going for a job interview and they were equally skilled, apart from the fact that one had a degree, then that could be the clincher. That could kind of be the determining factor. However, it's not absolutely necessary in this kind of thing, because mostly it's about what can you do. An employer is more interested in, if we give you this project to work on, whether it's music or post, can you do it on time to a high standard? Can you get the job done? However you've arrived at that, isn't that important? A degree is one way of getting there, but there are other avenues. So it's not critical, but could be of use. Yeah, you've got technology continuously evolves over time. It's never ending, and it never will end. And there's so much you can do in the field of audio. You don't. Some people might have a preconceived notion that they want to be like a music producer and they want to be in the studio all day producing bands, and that could happen. And someone's got to do it, but not everybody can. And there are other aspects of sound production that you could look into. For example, I do audio post-production. Every so often I'll record an album or like a little EP for a band just as a side project. But also there are other things that you can do even like within something like post-production. For example, audio restoration I've been getting into quite a bit recently. People sending me noisy audio files that need denoising. I don't necessarily have to mix it. I just have to know about how to get rid of the noise. And that has been quite a decent little income for me. But also, I personally have got more into the video side of things, shooting and editing video, and it kind of ties in. It's not completely different. So I'd say look at related things and consider whether you can do those alongside what you intended to do, the main kind of audio production. Not necessarily, no. If you want to work with Beyonce, then that's fine, and if you can, then great. You're doing well if you're at that kind of level. But, there's only so many people who can be working at that level. And generally, once you attain that kind of level of skill and success, you're going to pretty much remain at that level. So it's not often that those kind of opportunities come about, I suppose. But it just depends how you measure success, really. Is success measured by meeting your intentions with what you set out to achieve, or is it the accolade of working with big names? It's hard to determine, really. Success is if you've achieved your goals and you're happy with it, and you've got to make enough money to live a comfortable life, but you don't necessarily have to be like living in a mansion. It's just being successful is down to the individual as to what they consider it to be, really. And as long as you're determined and you set your goals and you stick to it and you work hard, then you're going to achieve it. I think you can't just say, right, 5 years is up, let's change this. You've got to just arrive at those decisions naturally, I suppose. And this is why you have to have more than one thing happening at once, different sidelines of work. Maybe, some people will be successful, very successful artists in their own right. Others, maybe they're not the performer necessarily, although they would like to be. Maybe they're more of a songwriter, or maybe they are more of a producer, or maybe they're just an engineer. You could be working in something, you might be almost right about what you want to do, but not quite right, because maybe, if your mum or your auntie or whatever says, oh, you're really good at singing, that's their opinion, isn't it, as a family member? And, record companies have lots of people who are the songwriters, and it's kind of better in a way, because wouldn't it be good to be earning a decent salary and you can just walk down the street and no one knows who the hell you are, and you don't need to worry about being a celebrity and all that kind of crap? Oh. You could be as successful, but more in the background. I'd prefer that. If you force it, if you have to force it, then it probably isn't going to happen. If you are inherently really excellent, then it'll just happen probably because you're that good. So you can't force it. You can't be some delusional X Factor type person who thinks they're good when they're actually a total pile of shit. Sometimes they can force it. The record company can put all the advertising and promotion behind it, and they can force a shit band to be popular. But generally, it's mostly the ones who are genuinely good who become the ones who are successful. Just think about multiple income streams. So if you can do things like having a YouTube channel, it's generating money from ad revenue, only a little bit. And the fact that you've got something going on YouTube, people, I've had jobs come through just because they've seen my YouTube channel. And they've said, oh, I've seen your channel. Can you teach me Pro Tools? So I was teaching a guy from India recently online during COVID. Great. Yeah, I was just on Skype with him and answering questions about Pro Tools, and he paid me a little bit to do that. Another guy somewhere further down south, and another person I actually went to his house last year or the year before, spent a day teaching him Pro Tools as a result of having an online presence on YouTube. So those videos which are kind of put out for free, you get it back in other ways. So you don't charge for the videos, but you can monetize it through ads, and you get get it back in unexpected jobs that come in as a result of it, if it's good. So my favorite microphone for recording vocals or dialogue has changed. I used to quite like the Beyer MC740, and I still do. You know, it's really good. It's kind of a little bit overlooked. It's kind of comparable in some ways to a Neumann U87, but it was cheaper. It was superseded by the MC840, but recently, actually, I've been using the Aston Origin, which is about a quarter of the price of that, and it's brilliant. So it's like £200 or so. Really good microphone, fixed pattern, large diaphragm cardioid.
What was the name again?
The Aston Origin. Favorite monitor for mixing? Well, at home I use Mackie's. I use an old pair of Mackie HR824s. And I'm so used to the sound of them that they're pretty neutral, I think. But you've got to remember the room has to be good. Room acoustics are key with any monitoring. I rarely use headphones for mixing or mastering, but when I'm on the occasions when I have to listen to something through headphones, usually if I'm recording something out on location, then it'll be the Sennheiser HD25s. I'm very interested in audio, in lots of aspects of audio, like home cinema is one of my interests, but also on a fitness side, parkour, you know, like free running. So I do that on a regular basis.
Risky sport?
It's perceived as risky, but actually it's a managed risk. It's not like the high-flying roof jumps that you see on certain videos, you know, it's a bit different to that.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.